Welcome everybody. Welcome Ed, founder of festivalpass.com. Excuse me. Welcome Ed Vincent, founder of festivalpass.com. So the first bullet point for us to consider, Ed, is maybe just give us a general overview of your business in your career and what the product that is Festival Pass is.
Sure, sure. So often when I explain it, I give a little bit of my background to create the context for why Festival Pass came to be. So I'll try and go through pretty quickly because I don't want to spend too much time in the deep delves of the background. But I've been an entrepreneur for well over 20 plus years. From New York City before moving to Austin. Started my career as an investment banker a couple of years in after banking. The internet 1.0 came about. I left banking in 1999 to start my first internet company. It was an e-commerce company. Sold it a few years later in 2001. Following that sale, I started an experiential marketing firm. It was about a 70-person firm in New York City. We would bring major brands into major live events, as well as activations across the streets of New York, et cetera. Helped launch numerous film festivals like the Vail Film Festival, worked on Sonoma Valley Film Festival. I owned a film festival in the Dominican Republic. Even built a hotel down there with Maxim Magazine, if you guys remember good old Maxim Magazine back in the day. The CEO was a friend of mine, a guy named Stephen Colvin. They were expanding their brand, and we built a branded hotel called Maxim Bungalows down there, which was a lot of fun. Ran the company for about a decade. Learned a lot about just events in general and what the live experience really entails. Wanted to get back into software, so I started a B2B SaaS business. This was kind of a deviation from the world of entertainment. It was in franchise and multi-unit businesses, but I learned a lot about subscription-driven revenue streams and recurring revenue. Built that company for a few years, sold it in 2014. We ended up merging with a portfolio company of one of our investors. And then I started a data and analytics company, and this gets a little closer into Festival Pass, is it was in the TV and film space. So a lot of big clients like A&E networks, AMC networks. I'm sure you guys all remember the TV shows of AMC like Breaking Bad, Walking Dead, Mad Men, all clients of ours. Worked with a lot of different film studios, really helping them understand their consumer data. And then started doing some stuff in the movie ticketing space. There's a company called movietickets.com that got bought by Fandango. Spent a few years as a client helping them package their decades worth of data in that sale. And then a lot of people recognize an infamous company called MoviePass. MoviePass was interesting because it came and changed a lot of the traditional way people went to live movies in the theater. And the CEO had reached out to me, asked me to come in and help them with their data. They were growing really fast, hundreds of thousands of new subscribers on a weekly basis. And they didn't really have any data chops to really figure that out. So I spent about 18 months as their de facto chief data officer inside their company, but not as an FTE. They had hired my data and analytics company, but still was there 4 to 5 days a week, seeing all the good and bad that happened in the world of MoviePass. Great product market fit.
What's the CEO's name?
The CEO was Mitch Lowe, but
Okay.
the founders were different. There was a pair of founders that then sold the company to a publicly traded holding company in about 2017, 2018. And then Mitch Lowe took over as the CEO. He's the
Okay.
one who reached out to me. He was a former co-founder of Netflix back in the day, and then also was the CEO of Redbox, if you remember Redbox.
Hmm.
But the thing about MoviePass, which is interesting, is it had a good product market fit, and it had two really core problems. They had an unsustainable business model that was actually even fixable. That wasn't even the major problem. The bigger issue is that it was owned by a publicly traded holding company, and the CEO of the holding company made money raising money. So he had raised close to $500 million in the public markets, and he was peeling off tens of millions of dollars for himself along the way. His name was Ted Farnsworth. I don't know if you heard of it.
That's who I met with. I've had a
Oh,
meeting with him. Yeah.
okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Ted's an
He's a
interesting guy.
character. Yeah.
He's a character. Unfortunately for him, I think about 2 or 3 months ago, he was indicted by the SEC for
Mm.
everything that happened in the MoviePass days, for doing exactly what created the conflict of interest for the business, right? So MoviePass had a path to actually become a billion-dollar company. It just he didn't allow the group of people to change the business model to make that work. But along the way, it was a great learning experience for me, and it was learning about what to do and what not to do in that kind of subscription entertainment world. And around that time, I had some friends over at ClassPass, if you guys are familiar with ClassPass. And ClassPass in that time frame, 2017, 2018, they introduced a credit-based currency business model. And that is actually what fixed the model. They had all the same problems MoviePass did early on, trying to figure out unlimited subscriptions, trying to figure out X amount of, events or classes per month. That didn't really work. But with a credit-based currency, they could have a flat monthly subscription fee, and allow for dynamically priced inventory. So it allowed people to say, hey, if there's a high demand class at 8 a.m. with the best teacher, it costs 15 credits. But if it's a low demand spin class in the mid afternoon, it's 3 credits. And you choose how you spend your credits. That allowed them to be gross margin positive on every transaction. It allowed them to then scale. They grew to over 100 countries. And you probably know the story of ClassPass. They sold for close to $2 billion to MindBody. MindBody and them merged really, and they still operate today under that same credit-based currency model. So the ClassPass initiative allowed me to come up with what the Festival Pass underlying core business model is. So effectively, I wanted to, at the time, I decided I wanted to create a subscription-driven membership in the live experience industry. Started realizing how large of an industry it really is. It's over a $200 billion global business across music and sports and theater and comedy, et cetera. And it hadn't really been innovated on in many decades. So there's still the traditional ticket buying experience that still exists today. Is there's primary ticketers and secondary ticketers. Obviously, most people know the primary, the StubHub, I'm sorry, the Ticketmasters of the world. And then the secondary is the StubHub, SeatGeek, and Vivid Seats of the world. There's still just a big consumer friction in the process of buying tickets. And what's interesting is a large portion of all ticket buying starts at the search engine. So 60-70% of all ticket buying starts on Google or some other search engine, where somebody goes in and they type in, my favorite artist, like Taylor Swift, or they type in Chris Stapleton, or they type in New York Knicks, or whatever they're looking to go see. And they end up with 10 or 12 different paid links. Those paid links bring you to all the names we just talked about: StubHub, SeatGeek, Vivid Seats, Ticketmaster. And all of those paid links then bring you down a rabbit hole of finding the ticket to that one event you were searching for. So I sometimes find that event, and in the process of finding it, I realized that, hey, maybe I'm going to spend $200 for this ticket. Sounds great. Put my credit card in, and then I get $100 in fees on top of it. So now all of a sudden, 50% in fees are then charged on top of my original ticket price. They get frustrated. That consumer experience kind of becomes frustrating. I potentially click out of it, start a new search under a different paid link, and then end up with a very similar environment. Even if I buy the ticket, I usually get frustrated on who I bought it from, don't have any loyalty or appreciation for who that company was. And then 3 months later, guess what? I want to go to another event. I go back to Google and I start the whole process over again. So the issue there is there's billions of dollars being wasted in rebuying the same customer over and over and over again. And that was something that is solvable, right? So the only people winning in that model, the customer doesn't win, the ticketing companies don't win. The only people that win
There, come on in.
Google or Meta in that process. So at the core, Festival Pass as a business model is it's a subscription membership for live experiences. We enable people to become members, and they save 10 to 30% on what they would spend on any of the other services because of the fact that we don't charge those egregious ticketing fees. And then we're building out a bunch of different membership benefits across the way. The one last thing to share before kind of just like open it up to the next question, John, sorry if I directly went into this whole process here without going one by one on the questions, but the context around it is I like to say where ClassPass meets Amazon Prime for live experiences. And ClassPass, I explained it. It's that credit-based currency that really makes the model work. On the Amazon Prime side that was one of the businesses that figured out how to solve the not buying the customer over and over again. So everybody here is likely an Amazon Prime member, and you probably became a Prime member simply because of the fact that there was free shipping and you were going to save some money. In that process, after you joined, you got a bunch of other benefits. You got some free movies, you got some discounts at Whole Foods. And before you know it, you were happy that you're an Amazon Prime member and you constantly came back and used it. But the bigger thing that happened was your behavior changed. You used to go to Google every time you wanted an everyday item, but you don't do that anymore. Once you're a Prime member, you simply go back to Amazon and you start your search on Amazon. That allowed Amazon to save billions of dollars in reacquiring that same customer over and over again. And it enabled them not only to save money by not paying to reacquire the customer, but it allowed them to build a multi-billion-dollar ad business because the search is now starting on Amazon, not on the search engine. So that same analogy is where we're going with Festival Pass. So once we acquire a member once, our free shipping is effectively the no ticketing fees. So it's cheaper to get a ticket on Festival Pass. And then the other benefits keep them around. But the behavior shift happens once they're a member, they have credits on our platform. And once they have credits on our platform, it's like having a bank account. So therefore, every time they're looking for a ticket, they don't go to Google anymore. They simply come to Festival Pass. So we're not repaying to acquire that same user over and over again every time they're thinking about attending a live event. So anyway, I'll stop there. There's obviously a lot more to the business model behind it, but John, go ahead.
Yeah, no, awesome. My questions will mostly be to clarify some of that stuff because I recently became very curious and about Buffett and Munger from the Founders podcast. And so there was a bunch of themes that I have been loosely familiar with over the arc of my career, but that I became acutely familiar with in the last year. And basically the description that you just gave is the sort of the narrative that I've heard loosely over many conversations with you at the Red Fridge or at Pickleball or whatever. And I was like, wow, there's like a bunch of sort of Buffett, Munger isms cooked into this. And I became, I'm naturally interested in ticketing. I worked also in the secondary ticketing experience at a place that's also probably going to get indicted by the SEC. But that wasn't why I worked there. And I have become very interested in Buffett and Munger as I'm looking for uh, sort of timeless principles related to the values that I hold towards my business, which I think if you're a founder in isolation, it can be very, very difficult to understand things like, the bulk of the value for a business might be delivered in year 10 or 15 or 20 when, there might be a venture sales cycle that's like 5 years. Or you're like another thing that is really common in my industry, which is that in services, people are always looking to sort of grow the margin. And so you end up with a business that is built around how much margin can my sort of customers sustain. And if you dig really deeply into Buffett and Munger, they have like this sort of phrase, shared economy scaled. So like your job is actually really to sort of reduce and create economies of scale which save money and pass that savings on to your customer, which means your margins might be low, especially in the beginning, while you're sort of creating a lifetime customer base, which is what I think you're setting up Festival Pass for. And then the value comes, 10, 15 years down the line when basically your ownership of the market is so big and the market itself is growing that whether or not you're extracting 2% gross margin or 40% gross margin is sort of irrelevant at that point because the total market size is so big. I mean, it's not irrelevant 2 to 40, but most products will have a reasonable degree of margin that they could support. So then some questions for you. Have you actually sort of read the Buffett and Munger literature or, I'm like my basics right now are the Poor Charlie's Almanac and the Founders Podcast. So have you intentionally studied any Munger or Buffett?
I haven't related to Festival Pass, but obviously as a 20 plus year entrepreneur, Buffett and Munger have always been on my radar. And even going back to university where I was a finance major, it was all coming through from day one on how they look at both investments, but even more so, the understanding of businesses that provide a a quality product to an end consumer. So the answer is no directly, but anyway, I believe in the same philosophies.
Do you do you remember any of your sort of on-ramps to Buffett or Munger, or any of the particular things that first sparked your interest in them?
Yeah, honestly, I don't remember the exact on ramps. I mean, I've been part of an entrepreneur community for a very long time,
Yeah,
and 3 years at an MIT program around the entrepreneurial study. Over the many years, there's always conversations around Buffett and Munger, and always conversations around some of the principles. So I don't remember the exact
sure.
on ramp.
Social osmosis or some version of that. Um, and then so I'm looking at my notes. We
Can I
got
ask
the
a clarifying question, John?
Sure. That's
Um,
Sam for the audience. Oh yeah, I can see you.
uh, yeah, Ed, and I'm sorry if I missed this in your explanation. You talked about a lot about the value to the festival goer, the concert goer. Um, how are you providing value to the event promoters? Did you get into that? Did I miss that?
I didn't get into it per se, but the reality is we're focused on the consumer side of providing a better experience. So as you're probably familiar, there's 75 million millennial and Gen Zs in the US alone that have been to more than 6 live events in the past 12 months, spending $1,000 to $1,500 on tickets. And the experience has not been useful for them. Ultimately, what we are building, we're not a ticketing company, nor do we ever want to be one. We're an audience company, and we're in the process of building an audience of millions that are joining a membership around certain passions they have, whether that passion's music, the passion could be sports or comedy or travel. So it's really about building an audience of members that can communicate within a community around each other. And as that community grows, we will provide a great source for distribution for a lot of the venues and promoters, et cetera, from that are creating the events.
So,
So
and I guess one more specific question is like, are you buying inventory from events promoters and ingesting that into your credit system? Like that
yeah,
was
so
kind of a leading question. It's like, are you buying up the inventory from the event companies or?
currently, we are not. So we tap into a lot of the same secondary sources that all the big secondary providers tap into. So we have 95% of the same inventory you might find on a StubHub, SeatGeek, Vivid Seats. Um, but we're getting it for the same wholesale price that they're getting it for. We're just not charging 40 to 50% in fees on top of it. Um, there is a path for us to get more direct inventory. Um, the reality is that when you're building a marketplace, you want as much inventory as possible, especially in the scenario I mentioned where people are joining and then they're starting their journey on Festival Pass. We want to have almost every ticket possible. And for the end consumer, all they care about is, did I get a ticket to the show I want to go to, or did I get a ticket to the sports event I want to go to? The reality is, over time, getting those tickets direct for favorable pricing will do two things. It will either increase our margin over time, or it will enable the consumer, the member, to pay less for that ticket. So those are really kind of the two goals. So where I see us providing value is once we have millions of members in our platform and we have a lot of information against that community and the social graph around it, we'll be able to really drive sell-through of tickets for venues and promoters. So they're not also spending a ton of money on digital marketing in order to drive those sales.
You guys have value and leverage at that point. You
Correct.
got both, right?
Correct.
Cool. Thank you.
Coming back to the Munger and Buffett stuff for a moment, and then I'll help us move on from that. I listened to a bunch of founders podcasts that talked about Costco and how Buffett was really interested in whoever does the internet version of Costco, and that's when they got really interested in Prime. And I was curious, Ed, if you have any sort of like, what's your perspective on Prime? How long have you sort of, I don't know, I'm assuming you're a Prime customer yourself.
Correct.
Are there any interesting sort of bumps along the way about you and Prime that would be interesting for people to know about, or about how you understood that the sort of Prime model could be used the same way with tickets?
Yeah, so I look at it in two ways, right? And that's why when we talk about the combination of models from a class pass model and a prime model, we're taking kind of the best of both worlds. Whereas we're not necessarily we're not at all charging a flat annual fee and then just giving better margin or better pricing to our members. It's more constructed within more of a class pass model where they're receiving credits for their monthly commitment, and whatever tier they're on Festival Pass, they purchase those credits for a different price. So at the lowest tier, they're paying one price, and at the highest tier, they're getting per credit price is cheaper. So it increases their savings by the more they're committing, which is a little bit different than the Prime or Costco model, which is trying to get as many people as possible to pay an annual fee, which then on top of it, they'll make money on, smaller margins on volume, but they're not necessarily providing the customer any bigger value for larger volume purchases. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but the one thing I would say is on the prime model that's important for us, and the thing that's very relevant and very comparable is there's something that brings you in, which is usually price. There's some kind of economic value, which Prime led with free shipping, and that's what we're leading with the no ticketing fees. But where the customer satisfaction, I think, comes is, of course, they always want to save money. That's the initial thing that brings them in. But it's like, what else do I get now that I'm a member? Like, what makes me feel like I'm part of this, as opposed to what makes me feel like I'm just saving money. So for us, it's really about building those benefits. Our goal really is, if somebody's paying $99 a month to be a member of Festival Pass, I want them to have $99 a month of benefit before they even choose to redeem a credit for a ticket. Like, I want to feel that it's almost free for them because they're getting all these other benefits that are worth as much as they're paying on a monthly basis. So that
Is
Prime kind of did that with the annual membership. They said, hey, if it's $150 a year or whatever the exact dollar amount is you're getting free movies, you're getting discounts at Whole Foods, you're getting Audible books, all of that. You're thinking to yourself, well, hey, I'm already getting plenty of benefit for the fee I'm paying. Therefore, there's no reason not to be a member.
yeah. Um, is 99 the price of a Festival Pass account per month?
We have 19, 49, and $99 a month memberships. Each one of them has an annualized plan. So yeah, so it's they're multi-tiered, and the goal, right, is we want as many $99 a month members as possible.
And as a dad with two kids who has no time on my hands, what would I get if I purchased in Austin, if I purchased a $19 account? Like, how would my world change? How would I take advantage of that?
Yeah, so it's an entry level, which is, not an expensive monthly fee, and you receive 15 credits a month. So over time, your credits accrue and they roll over, so that you'll have credits to redeem for something. But at $19 a month, you're kind of stepping your foot into the community. You are earning credits for it, and we'll continue to add more and more benefits for the why, but you still earn the credits to allow yourself to go to events. So when you say, it allows you to connect with other members on the platform, it allows you to earn 2x referral credits, it allows you to, join some of the other benefits along the way.
But I mean, for example, would it get me into a movie? Would I go to a show at a bar? Like, what would be some
Yeah,
examples of like places
it,
I could use those 15 credits?
sure. So obviously 15 credits, if you think about it as about $15, it's going
Like,
to
I'm
be
probably not getting backstage with Willie at ACL. I understand that part.
no. But yeah, so our credit correlation is not too different from a dollar correlation. It's not exactly a dollar, but it's similar. So if it would cost you $400 to $500 to go to ACL Live, the music festival, it's going to be about 400 to 500 credits to do so. So like, we have things where you can get a show at Emo's in Austin for 20 credits, or you can go to, like, not just Austin, but Major League Baseball. You can go to a game for 15, 20 credits. But if you want to go to, floor seats at the Knicks, you're spending 400 or 500 credits.
Yeah, interesting. Awesome. And so moving down my list of questions, the next one is, and you've kind of already answered this, and maybe you'll reiterate or distill or offer us some other information, sort of where in your career did some of your most critical insights emerge? Of course, MoviePass and running your own data analytics company. But are there any parts of how you think about this that you haven't talked about yet that were really important, or any parts of your career that really helped you grow in terms of your perspective that you think are worth highlighting?
Yeah, I mean, I always, whenever I talk to investors or folks that we're pitching the product to, is I often say it's like the ideal founder product fit, because each of the pieces of my past experiences tie directly into what we're doing. So when it comes down to banking or finance, we haven't really got into like not only how the credit-based currency works, but what we're doing with the lifetime pass and how we're like using that as creating a token and a capital play. And I can explain a lot of that, in addition to what we're talking about. And then when I look at my experiential marketing time, I understand what it takes to throw an event, what it takes to create an event, what it takes to activate at an event. So I have a lot of experience in the space. And then when I look at my B2B SaaS business, it was all about, well, subscription driven revenue is a great win for lots of people, right? It allows people to it's good for the business to create recurring revenue. It's good for predictability. It's good for the customer to be able to get a lower price for committing to something. And then obviously the data and analytics experience is a lot of what we're doing here as we build a big audience. It's really going to be about the data and how we can leverage that for AI and a few other things.
Awesome. Um, Something you said about MoviePass having great product market fit, but a failing business model. It gives me the question, is it actually possible to have product market fit if the business model is failing or is so flawed that you have such a finite runway?
Yeah, with MoviePass, the problem was just that. The reason the product market fit was great because it was such a ridiculous deal. You were paying $10 a month and going to as many movies as you wanted to in the month. So by the time you went to your second movie, you're way ahead of the game. The reason why I say it was still a great product market fit, regardless of it, you know, what's that question? I'm giving away a dollar for a penny. But the concept of subscription in the movie theater going experience has carried through even post MoviePass to every single exhibitor out there. So I'm sure you've seen it. AMC has their own subscription plan. Alamo's got their own subscription plan. Regal has their own subscription plan. So it really changed the way the whole entire movie going experience looked at it, and people have chosen to really want to purchase a subscription to the theater they want to go to.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, sounds great. Another Munger centric question. He writes about wanting to know how he would die so he can avoid ever going to that place. And he has some interesting thoughts about figuring out the things that can kill you and basically just staying away from that. And that kind of is in and of itself a success path. And I'm curious if you could figure out, or for certain, any of the various things that would kill Festival Pass as is.
Yeah, so it's a good question and a good analogy, and it can lead us transition us into talking about the lifetime pass and why we're doing it. But for me, it's very simple. Is once we become cash flow positive, then we can't really die, right? We won't run out of money. Therefore, we won't get to a place where somebody else can tell us our time is over. So for us, in order to get there as fast as possible is important to us, and to do it in a way that brings others along that feel a shared ownership, so they want to keep participating. So what I mean by that is, we have a lifetime pass, and there's only 10,000 of these lifetime passes that will ever be sold. And the reason we're doing it is for multiple reasons, but one is a capital play to create cash flow. The other is a 10,000 superfan play to create a flywheel of dedicated, non-churning customers. So effectively, we've already sold hundreds of these. We will sell all 10,000 out in the next 12 months or so. But as we sell them, they're selling for a current price. Right now it's $2,900, and you get $1,200 of credits on the platform to spend any way you want. And then every year on the anniversary, it gets renewed and you get another $1,200 to spend. But the price of that pass goes up every few weeks by about $50. So ultimately, the price of that pass will go from $2,900 today, and we started selling it for $2,000. So we're already at $2,900, and it will eventually be $6,000. But what that means is once we sell these 10,000 passes, we'll have $40 million will come into the bank because we'll sell them on average for about $4,000 each. And once that $40 million comes into the bank, we have a lot of financial flexibility on how we manage the business and how we raise capital going forward. For us is after we sell approximately 5 to 700 more of these passes, we'll be cash flow positive, and we'll be EBITDA positive within 9 to 12 months. So we'll be in a place in the company where we won't die. And the beauty of our type of business is the network effect allows us, as we get more and more members, everybody wins. The members win because they get more benefits. We win because we have more reoccurring paid members. And then the event owners, as we were briefly talking about earlier, they start winning because we have this passionate audience of people that have already raised their hand and said, I love to go to live events. I've already prepaid to go to live events. I already have a bank account sitting here to spend on live events. Please tell me which ones I should go to. So it's a win-win all around. But to answer your question directly, it's once we are cash flow positive, I feel we've taken away one of the paths for death.
And are the credits lifetime, or do they expire each year?
For the lifetime pass, each year they refresh. I like the word refresh versus expire, but that means they do not roll over year to year. So you get $1,200 worth of credits, and you could use up to those 1,200. But if you only use $900 worth of them, the next year it just refreshes again to 1,200.
And then a regular pass, like a regular account, there would obviously it doesn't accrue from one year to the next.
Well, the regular accounts do. So right now, if you're a monthly or an annual member and you've paid for those credits, they do roll over. I don't know if we'll keep that model forever. So for example, ClassPass does not let you roll over credits. They let you roll over a certain amount, a very small amount of the total. But we'll have to take that up down the road. But currently,
Yeah,
because we're early stage and we want people to get the most value possible, the monthly and annual credits do roll over and they accrue, and they're just like a bank account.
which leads me
I'm
to
very curious, Ed, about this pricing of. I mean, you're almost selling a perpetual, right? It's not quite because of the rollover that you just described, but that's my mental model anyway. So,
Sure.
um, so how do you model the pricing on that, and what presumably you have to keep the fraction of your total audience relatively small with that in order to make it effective.
Correct. So you position that well. So effectively, there's only 10,000 that will ever be sold. The goal is to sell them up front as the first portion of our membership base, because it will bring in a lot of capital for us up front, and give us financial flexibility in how we finance the business. But we expect to have over the next 3 to 4 years many millions of members on the platform, as well as 3 to 500,000 paid monthly and annual subscribers. So the 10,000 will only be a small fraction of the total, but it will be kind of an elite status where people knew that they got in early and they get this massive, great benefit. The interesting thing, though, is those 10,000 are also digital assets. So when somebody buys it, they own it and they can resell them in the future. I think you're getting to the point of how do we manage the liability of perpetual credits?
Yes.
So the answer to that is the $40 million that we bring in from the sale of those passes will last us approximately 10 years in fulfilling credits for this cohort. And there's a mathematical way we get there. It's a classic. We've sold hundreds of these already, so we have some data. I can't say it's perfect data, but it's some. And they work on a classic bell curve. So about 20% of the people that have the lifetime pass use every single credit possible every single year and try to max it out, like, like somebody might do on an airline points model or something like that. About 20% love that it's a digital asset and it's increasing in value. So they bought it just in the hopes that, hey, if I need it, I'll use it, but I could make some money on this in the future. And then the other 60% use it as you would expect, where it's a sunk cost. I got in early, I paid a flat fee, and now I have these credits. And every time I kind of want to go to an event, I simply use Festival Pass. And I don't care if I use 900 of them in this year or 600 of them in this year. I just know every single year I'm always going to have a place to get free tickets going forward. So when you look at that bell curve, we estimate our liability per member ends up being about $600 per year per member. So that puts us at a total liability with all 10,000 at about $6 million a year of liability. And then with the $40 million that we bring in up front, of course, we're going to conservatively invest those dollars over time. So as we earn $2 to $3 million a year in interest and burn through $6 million of liability, that still gives us a decade's worth of runway to fulfill tickets for this group of people, while at the same time giving us financial flexibility for how we operate the business, while at the same time creating 10,000 super fans that create the flywheel to drive the rest of the community.
And those are transferable?
The passes can be resold. So the answer is they're transferable in the sense that they're tokenized. So on the blockchain,
Right.
so somebody owns it, and in the future they can resell it. We will
But they're
be.
non-fungible transferables?
Yeah, they are
Okay.
NFTs at the core. So effectively, we're going to launch a secondary marketplace within Festival Pass within the next 6 months or so. Therefore, the members that own them can sell them to other members, and as they transfer them, baked in the contract is a 10% transaction fee goes back to us. So that
Got
also
it.
helps fund the longevity of them.
Thank you.
I'm not certain I have a lot of other questions about Festival Pass. I'm definitely thinking about buying lifetime tickets for my wife and myself and giving them to my kids when they're of age. Let's see, Ed, what do you like most about being a founder and CEO?
Well, I'm assuming we can all kind of talk the same way, but my favorite part is having an idea and that's just abstract, and then putting it into something that becomes real. So that's always been my favorite part about being an entrepreneur is to dream and then make the dream a reality. Sometimes it takes a little longer to make it a reality. Sometimes it comes faster, but either way, that's always been my favorite part of entrepreneurship.
There's a book that I love that I became enamored with in the last year called What They Don't Teach You at Harvard Business School. And one of the lines, it's about it's Mark McCormack's book, the gentleman who signed Jack Nicklaus and Arnold Palmer and basically created sports sort of talent, representation and marketing. And one of the lines in the book, he's like, a lot of being an entrepreneur and building businesses is just taking your ideas and putting them into motion. And it doesn't have to be any more complex than that. So that's an incredibly great answer. You pretty much paraphrased him exactly. So I don't have a ton more questions. I don't know if you have any questions for me, Ed, or Daniel or William. Daniel, do you want an introduction to the group? Thank you for joining us all the way from Vienna, 9 o'clock.
Yeah. Hey guys, yeah, it is like 9 o'clock over here,
It is.
9:45-ish. Yeah, so I'm formerly an engineer over at Apple. Now I'm a program manager, still at Apple. I can do this job remotely, so I left electrical engineering behind. That was a lot of it was a lot more stressful building iPhones and the Vision Pro and stuff, and now it's a little bit more chill, which I appreciate. I am kind of curious though, Ed, how do you manage kind of the daily stresses? Do you have like rituals or kind of routines to your life that kind of make you, your brain doesn't have to process so much? You just kind of have this flow that you do either morning or night. I'm sure the daytime is usually pretty back to back, but I'm curious what your thoughts are there.
Sure. I mean, first of all, good to see you again. I think we've run into each
Yeah,
other a few times here in Austin. Um,
yeah.
so, I mean, for me, it's just routine, like at the core, like working out is a big routine, right? So 3, 4, 5 days a week as I can. I finally figured out that classes, I was never a class guy for the gym, but all of a sudden when I go, now that I take a class every once in a while, like for 1 hour, I can absolutely forget about everything. And it just listen to somebody else tell me what to do. And that's very therapeutic. Obviously, just the benefits of working out in general reduce anxiety and stress and all the things that go with it. And then the one other thing, I think I am lucky because, I've been through some I'd say stressful, perceivably stressful things in life, whether it's being an entrepreneur or going through a divorce or anything you can pile onto that is I'm lucky that I sleep well every night. Like I can personally separate what is going on in the day at the time it is to go to bed. And I'm truly able to, I mean, I'm not perfect. Every once in a while, I'll, be thinking about something and then, might take a minute to go to sleep. But 99% of the time when it's time for bed, I just mentally turn off and say, there's nothing more I can accomplish today. It's still going to be there in the morning. And when I wake up in the morning, I'm going to be much better off having had a good night's sleep to be able to accomplish the things that seem like they're going to fall apart between the time I go to bed and the time I wake up, and they never do.
Do you typically use an alarm clock or your phone as your alarm?
I typically use my phone as the alarm, but I often wake up prior to the alarm going off.
That
What
much
time do you tend
energy?
to wake up? What time do you tend to wake up, Ed?
I'm usually like a 7:30 a.m. kind of guy. So I'm a midnight, like 11:30 to 7:30. I usually try and get a full 8 hours of sleep. Um, and I still enjoy all the other things of life. I like to play pickleball with John once in a while. I enjoy, having a glass of wine and maybe that helps once in a while, a little de-stress with a glass of wine and a good movie. But yeah, in general, for me, it's sleep and exercise is the thing that allows me to actually function.
Are there any, I'm just going to keep asking questions a bit. Are there any events that you yourself have been to that were great, either in movie or, comedy or sports or something?
I mean, too many to you know to
Pick a
pinpoint.
good, not, don't pick the best one, but pick a good one from recent memory.
Yeah, I mean, what I'd like to say is everybody. The beauty of what we have is we have so much different inventory. It fits in anybody's desires. Like I love all live events, and the ones that work for me the best are just happen to be the ones I like. So I like going to a big festival, but I don't want to go to 20 of them. I like going to see a big arena show with a major artist that's meant for an arena, but I don't personally love going to like the classic 20,000 seat arena where you're sitting, far, even the good seats are far off. That's not my vibe. I've been to many of them and I'll keep going to them because it's part of the job and the community,
But
etc.
some specifics. What are some specifics in the last 2 years?
Yeah. So had
Or
a ton.
things that just stand out, some artists or
Yeah,
some
no, my
brands.
girlfriend and I had a fun time a couple years back going to Okeechobee Festival, which is in Florida. It's about a 40,000 person weekend festival that isn't too dissimilar to like a Coachella like thing where half of the place is more like EDM and the other half is like classic music artists. So, and what was great about it is, we did the whole RV camping thing and it was a lot of fun. Luckily we knew the guy that started the festival, so we had a little extra access. But the joke of it all was because we had the access, we were in the campground directly next to one of these late night stages, and this guy specifically was like an ongoing like DJ from New York, but like before he like made his money doing other stuff. But so we thought the festival was over by midnight, and we'd go back to our go back to our RV only to have the stage like right in front of us going to 4 a.m. And then the moment we thought we get a little bit of sleep, it's 8 a.m. and they're doing sound check for the next day. And we're like, Jesus. But anyway, that was a great experience overall. But I also truly love like intimate venues. Like here in Austin, I love going to the Paramount because it's just a great old school venue. I appreciate, you know, whether it's a comedy show there or even just an orchestra like musician ensemble like Pink Martini. I don't know if you guys know what Pink Martini is. They're pretty amazing. But
It's
anyway,
the theater downtown, right? The Paramount on Congress.
yeah, and maybe it also comes back because it reminds me of like it was an old movie theater originally, and it also reminds me of like Broadway theaters in New York, which some of my favorite like I'm more of a venue guy and an artist guy, specifically overall. So if I have a artist I love and a venue I love, I go.
Yeah, I took my daughter to Alice in Wonderland at the Paramount last year. It was pretty great.
Cool. Yeah, and then like I could go on about I'm easier to talk about venues. Like I love Red Rocks, one of the best venues, the
Yeah,
Hollywood Bowl in LA, amazing. Like, just venues create magic.
yeah, yeah. I lived in that world a long time as well. Um, I I'm not such a night goer anymore, so it's been a while since I've been like I want to go out or I have the energy to go out. But also, again, I have two children under 3, one under 6 months. Um, any other questions or commentary? We've been going a solid 45, 50 minutes, so we're, probably at what is a useful amount of time for anybody here or anybody on the internet that might watch this after the fact. Any other stones we should turn over? Will, do you have any questions?
No, I think that notion of the perpetual was my main one. It sounds like you have two things going for you that are robustly defensible going forward these days in the AI world. There are network effects and there's genuinely proprietary data, and that's a pretty good combination.
Yeah, we do have plans, in the next 6 to 12 months to really roll out AI agents for all of our members. And the beauty there is we can build that middle layer with the data that we have on our members. And not only is it the data they give us, but it's the data that the social graph that gets connected because our members can connect with each other on the platform. And if they, you have X amount of members in Austin, Texas that like Taylor Swift, that also like, Austin FC soccer or like the New York Knicks or the LA Lakers, we know that social graph. And that very much helps us building out the AI agent to be able to actually be there to provide as much information as possible in the most ease, both through voice, through text, through email, in any way a user might want to interact with the platform. So we're excited about that.
You just reminded me of, I know a bunch of for some reason, I keep meeting founders in the music space. And I met some at a Red Fridge event or I don't know, but needlemusic.co. Do you know them? They're LA based. They're trying to, the founder said, basically help people solve loneliness by curating groups of people around common musical interests.
Okay.
And I think it like my off the cuff thought is that some of these very specialized product experiences will have a very hard time growing because the total quantity of users you have to get onto like a music discovery platform for it to have a lot of longevity is like really high. And so those sort of volume rates are really hard to sustain once you specialize on that particular part of the problem. Whereas in your case, where you have a very sort of general recurring product need fulfillment cycle, it's easy to be like a year from now, the same person that is on the platform will still be interested 8 years from now, and that'll only grow.
Sure.
And you can sort of layer on data products on top of that versus picking like, we're going to solve one particular data problem up front, very hard to do.
Yeah, I agree. And I often, it's always the age old theory is it a product or is it a feature? And that sounds, I don't know them, but it sounds like it could be a feature within our platform. And we definitely plan on lots of interesting creative features to make the consumer experience around common interests better.
Yeah. So a couple more thoughts. We're taking me to interesting places. Did you learn anything from watching and or do you know anything about like Bandcamp?
I don't. You mean the movie?
No, the company. It's a relatively large um sort of I don't it's not really like a streaming company. It's like a marketplace where artists upload music and you can purchase you purchase the files or you purchase the vinyl or whatever. So it's kind of like an alternative to CD distribution to go that far. It's somewhere in between CD distribution and like a Spotify where you basically have no rights to the underlying product, but you have like infinite streaming possibility. And it comes up to me because I'm thinking about all the things that I still really care about in music. And one of the big problems that I personally experience is that I no longer really have a collection of music. And that really bothers me because it's really difficult to look back on the last 10 years of listening and make sense of anything. Whereas if you ask me what I was listening to when I was like 18 or 20, or even like 20 to 30, like I have a good sense of what I was listening to because it was like part of my collection and there was a lot of value in that. And now I'm like, what have I listened to on Spotify in the last 6 years? I don't know. How does any of it really relate back to my life? I don't know. There's just like no good mechanism for creating, and this is one of the things I love about mental models. There's no real mechanism for creating strong memories around things where you don't fully know the story of the artist, you don't know the story of how it relates to you, you don't have a physical object. Look, if you look at my bookshelf, right? My bookshelf is really important to me. And like if you were to know me, and even in this session, you can hear me talking about books incessantly because I still buy physical books. But like buying physical music is borderline impossible, right? Like there's nothing to buy. I'm not going to buy vinyl, right? That doesn't make sense. But like books, great. I'm going to be buying books until like I like think about it all the time. I'm like, what is the greatest thing I would pass on to my kids? Well, it's like my book collection, but more importantly, why did I create a book collection in life and how has it mattered to me? And I think about similar sorts of things, and Bandcamp sells vinyl. I'm very curious about this. Like, where is the actual sort of the physical product is lost still in my mind. It even used to
So
be t-shirts for me, and t-shirts now you buy them and they disintegrate in 2 years, right?
yeah, so what I would say on that is I think the younger generation sees different value in different things. And one of the pieces that we are playing with is digital assets, right? Which is one thing I did learn from the MoviePass days is people had so much pride in their list of movies they attended because they were able to go back, and MoviePass never made this a feature within the product. But people on Reddit would go out and say, look at my MoviePass app. I've went to these 30 movies and this is what I think about this movie and this is what I think about this movie, and they were able to prove that they've seen these movies and then comment on them. So in our world it's very similar. As once you become a festival pass member and you stay as one for a long time, you're right within your profile, it's listing all of the events you've been to. So it's showing you that I've been to this concert, I've been to this concert, I've been to this concert, and you can connect with other members on the platform around that concert. So you're able to start following and having conversations like, hey, do you remember this show? Remember when they played this song at this time? And all of a sudden you're creating this memory around it. And then having an actual digital asset is almost like having a CD, if you will, where now that you can choose to hold that digital asset and never sell it, and just use it as a way to prove your proof of attendance. They call it a POAP. But we're going to start issuing these digital assets for everybody that goes to anything. So you go to a specific show at a specific venue, you receive a digital asset, and these digital assets are valuable and can be traded and bought through the secondary exchange on our platform. But some may choose to not do that. They may choose just to hold it because it's important to them to have that memory and maybe they think 10 years from now that collection of digital assets could be worth something. It could have value, but it also could have sentimental value.
Yeah, interesting. I had a question in there and I totally forgot it, which means it's probably time to go. Topics we could cover in the future are your leadership team and your peers and how you find people you want to work with. And I also forget the other question. The other idea I was going to ask about in the future. Anyways, would you ever consider changing the name to Event Pass?
Probably not Event Pass, but I would consider changing the name, maybe Experience Pass. So we
I
really
like
think about it.
Experience Pass.
We think about it as an experience. I mean, we do own pass.live as a URL. And so I look at it this way: is we chose Festival Pass for a reason. It was because the next gen audience tends to have an emotional response to a festival. If they've been to a festival, they have that pleasurable endorphin that kicks in when they think about the last festival they went to. So there was really a specific reason we chose that path. But you're correct that we are much more than festivals, and as we grow, we have options to evolve to something else, to become, evolve to FedEx instead of Federal Express.
Is exp.com available? So it'd be
No,
killer.
it is not. I've looked at xpass.com, which is not available. But we own Experience Pass.live.
Yeah,
So
solid.
there's a bunch that we have out there.
Okay, so thank you so much, Ed, for your time. Will and Daniel and Sam, who is also in for a moment, thank you guys for jumping in. I'm John Davison, founder of Startuplandia and the proprietor of jdtalks.ai. I hope everybody has had an opportunity to ask some interesting questions and learn from some things. Ed, I just really love like your attention to the life cycle of all the information related to all this different stuff. And I feel like you're really on a, incredible trajectory with what you have going here. I feel like my kids could be talking about something they did related to what you're building now 10 years from now. I mean, events were an incredible part of my life, all up until the last 2 or 3 years when I became, significantly more time burdened. But that arc is out there for them all the same.
It comes back. You'll be
Maybe.
going to events with them.
I hope for their sake. I hope that's not true. Okay, I'm going to end the recording.